Hello, how are you doing? I'm Larry, residing in the quaint town of Maplewood, nestled in Ontario, Canada. It may not be featured in travel guides, yet it holds the essence of home. At 32, my daily routine feels quite repetitive and unchanging. Nothing overly extravagant, nothing particularly thrilling, but that's precisely how I prefer it. Maplewood is a community where familiarity thrives, a place where you can enjoy a coffee without a second thought about whether the barista recognizes you. It's straightforward, it's serene, and it evokes a sense of security. Yet, there are moments when I find myself pondering whether there's something greater I'm overlooking, though that's a discussion for another occasion. I have a standard position in an office where I handle various technical tasks. While my job isn't dull, it doesn't quite ignite a sense of thrill either. My days are primarily filled with running errands and managing emails, just the usual routine. Honestly, I have no objections to it. It covers the expenses, and that's sufficient for the time being. A touch of stability has never been a bad thing, has it? Let's discuss Jason. I encountered Jason a few years back in quite an unexpected manner. One morning, as I made my way to work, I spotted him perched on a bench outside a cafe, his demeanor suggesting he had endured a tough night or something similar. He had that captivating presence, the sort that seemed to weave itself into the fabric of a narrative. The type of person you can sense has a story to tell, regardless of whether it's uplifting or troubling. I extended an invitation for him to join me for a ride. It wasn't anything to fuss over, honestly. I was simply attempting to do something kind, and I thought, why not? We started chatting, and the dialogue flowed effortlessly. It turned out he was merely a few years my junior, yet we connected quite effortlessly. In the coming months, we began to spend more time together. Initially, our interests seemed quite different. I'm more of a homebody, while Jason is quite the social butterfly, always out and about, meeting new people. Yet, that didn't hinder our friendship from blossoming. Ultimately, we managed to find a harmonious equilibrium between us. Jason's family circumstances were far from perfect, and he didn't reside with his mother, Mary. She resided in a distinct dwelling on the outskirts of town. Jason would drop by from time to time, yet generally, he preferred to maintain his space. Mary's health was not at its peak, and her car, being quite old, constantly required repairs. It was evident that Jason had a deep concern for his mom, yet he was often caught up in the demands of his own life, which meant he didn't always have the bandwidth to address her car troubles. That's when I entered the scene. On a particular afternoon, Jason reached out to me. He was at his job when his mother's car broke down once more. It was likely nothing major, perhaps just a simple battery problem, yet Mary found herself in urgent need of a vehicle, and the thought of waiting in line at the neighborhood mechanic's shop was far from appealing. Entering that place is always a bit of a struggle. Jason reached out to see if I could check out her car and lend a hand. He was unable to do it himself, so he inquired if I could go over and take a look at it. I was indifferent. I had no other commitments, and I was certain Jason would reciprocate if I found myself in need. I informed him that I would go directly to Mary's residence. Since Jason wasn't living with her, it was solely my responsibility to visit and uncover what was happening. Mary resided in a charming little house on the outskirts of town. It may not have been large, but it exuded a warm and inviting charm. A setting that perfectly embodies the vision of a grandmother's home, just as one would envision it. Cozy and welcoming. Upon my arrival, she welcomed me with a warm smile and expressed her gratitude immediately. It was evident that she felt a sense of relief with someone there to lend a hand. The car sat in the driveway, and as I peered under the hood, I realized it was nothing overly complex. It's likely just a straightforward problem with the battery or something similar. As I toiled away on the car, Mary began to engage me in conversation. She expressed her gratitude for having someone like Jason who surrounds himself with good friends like me. It was evident that she was making an effort to be courteous, yet there was an underlying hint of anxiety in her demeanor. Perhaps it was only my perception, but her demeanor was far from the warm and welcoming attitude one typically anticipates from a neighbor during a helping hand. Nevertheless, I didn't dwell on it too much. She was an older woman, likely feeling a sense of solitude, as many do when family support is absent. While I worked on the car, Mary continued to inquire about my life. Her interest was sincere, and it was clear to me that she lacked someone to converse with on a regular basis. I didn't mind. We covered a wide range of topics. Tasks, local chatter, our shared acquaintances. The dialogue flowed naturally, yet an unspoken tension lingered in the atmosphere. It's hard to articulate, but it felt as if she was reaching out to me in a way that went beyond what I was ready to embrace. Eventually, I completed the repairs on the car, and Mary urged me to stay for a cup of coffee. I took my time and decided to go along with it. As we gathered around the kitchen table, she continued to share the stories of her life. She spoke of the challenges of solitude and the nostalgia for times when life felt more uncomplicated. It was evident that she felt isolated. It seemed she wasn't seeking anything particular from me, yet her words resonated deeply. It seemed as though she was searching for someone to confide in, and I understand that feeling. In her 50s, she found that living alone posed its challenges, particularly when left to navigate the depths of her own thoughts. Yet, despite her apparent kindness, there was an underlying quality that stirred a sense of unease within me. A sense of intrigue lingered in the air, as if there was a deeper story within Mary that she was carefully concealing. After finishing my coffee, I expressed my gratitude for her hospitality and mentioned that it was time for me to leave. As I stepped outside, a strange blend of remorse and compassion washed over me. Though I understood she had no expectations of me, an unsettling feeling lingered, suggesting that something was amiss. On my way home, I reached out to Jason to reassure him that the car was in good condition. He expressed his relief and gratitude for my assistance, as he often does. Yet, Mary's words lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. She had revealed a bit too much, her enthusiasm to bond was palpable, and a nagging thought lingered in my mind about whether this might evolve into something I wasn't ready to face. Yet, I suppose only time will reveal the truth. Hello once more, it's Larry. After repairing Mary's car and enduring that strange coffee with her, I attempted to put the entire experience behind me. Well, it's not as if anything occurred. Mary was simply embodying her true self. Perhaps she was simply seeking companionship, yearning for a conversation partner. Initially, I brushed it off, but a persistent sensation lingered in my thoughts, suggesting that perhaps I had overlooked something important. I'm uncertain. Perhaps I was simply overanalyzing the situation. Ultimately, Mary was Jason's mother, and she wasn't about to act irrationally. That's the mantra I repeated to myself. Several days went by, and there was no word from Jason. We exchanged a few words, but nothing particularly remarkable. That was until one evening when I received a text from him that made my phone buzz. Hey Larry, my mom wanted to express her gratitude for your assistance with the car. She was curious if you might be interested in coming over again for dinner sometime. I'm certain she would value the companionship. I gazed at the words for a brief moment. It was typical for Jason to propose something along those lines. He understood that his mom enjoyed hosting gatherings, yet there was an unsettling quality to this particular occasion. There was something elusive about it, a feeling I couldn't quite articulate, yet I sensed a certain discomfort lingering beneath the surface. Mary had been quite amiable during my visit to repair the car, but dinner? That appeared to be a progression, wouldn't you agree? Perhaps I was simply reading too much into it. I didn't really have anything more worthwhile occupying my time. I pondered for some time. To be honest, I had my doubts about whether it was a wise choice, but ultimately, I thought it could be a thoughtful gesture. Jason made a request, and I was certain his mom would likely appreciate it. Additionally, I had been brought up to exhibit good manners. I responded and gave my consent. The following day, I made my way back to Mary's house. The weather was pleasant, slightly warmer than usual for late spring, yet still manageable. The house appeared unchanged from the last visit. Quaint, inviting, slightly vintage, yet that added to its charm. I pulled up to the front, inhaled deeply, and rapped on the door. Mary responded without delay. Larry, I'm absolutely thrilled you're here, she exclaimed, her smile beaming. She donned an apron, and a subtle aroma of something simmering wafted from the kitchen. "Thank you for the invitation," I remarked, as I entered the room. The familiar warmth of her house enveloped me, yet this time it carried an unusual quality. "Indeed, it has been quite a while since we welcomed guests," Mary said, guiding me toward the kitchen. She arranged the table meticulously, as if she had been anticipating this dinner for days. It was merely a straightforward meal, nothing elaborate. Succulent roast chicken accompanied by creamy mashed potatoes and a fresh salad. Yet, the dedication she displayed was unmistakable, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt for questioning whether there were hidden intentions behind her actions. We gathered around the table, and Mary began to speak. She recounted her history, her union with Jason's father, their relocation to Maplewood many years prior, and how she found herself alone after his death. Her voice carried a certain quality that stirred a sense of sadness within me for her. It was more than mere solitude, however. It was an emotion that ran deeper, akin to a sense of regret. She wasn't exaggerating, yet I could sense the gravity of her words. "So, what's your story, Larry?" Mary inquired as she chewed her food. "What tale do you have to share? What are your aspirations in life?" Surprised by the question, I offered her a smile and simply shrugged my shoulders. "Not a great deal, to be honest. I suppose I'm content with my current situation. I have employment, companions, and a home. I suppose I'll simply adapt to whatever comes my way." She remarked with a contemplative air, as though my response required her careful consideration. "Having a plan is definitely beneficial. Many individuals fail to recognize the significance of that aspect. One must have a clear destination in mind, otherwise, one risks wandering aimlessly." I acknowledged with a nod. I never found myself drawn to profound philosophical discussions, particularly during mealtime. Yet, I grasped the essence of her words. I found myself in a state of uncertainty, neither truly lost nor certain of my destination. Following dinner, we transitioned to the living room, where we engaged in conversation for a while longer. Mary appeared to relish the discussion. It was evident she was putting an effort to create a warm atmosphere for me, yet there was an underlying tension that permeated the entire evening. Perhaps it was only my perception, but it seemed to me that she was putting an excessive effort to establish some sort of bond with me. I made an effort to avoid overanalyzing it, however. At last, Mary rose to her feet. "Hey Larry, how about some dessert?" she inquired, her tone tinged with a hint of optimism. "I'm doing well. Thank you," I replied, eager not to linger too long. The hour was growing late, and while I wished to avoid any semblance of rudeness, an undeniable urge to leave began to take hold of me. "Thank you once more for the delightful dinner, Mary. It was truly delightful. I'm pleased you could join us," she remarked, her smile slightly dimmed now. "You're always invited here, Larry." I acknowledged with a nod and rose to my feet, reaching for my jacket. "Thank you. Catch you later." As I departed from her abode, a peculiar blend of feelings washed over me. A part of me experienced sympathy for her, yet another part felt a sense of discomfort. It wasn't merely the dinner or the simple act of her inviting me over. There were moments when her gaze lingered on me, as if she anticipated something deeper. I found it difficult to articulate, yet an undeniable sensation lingered within me, as if I were ensnared in a situation for which I was unprepared. While heading home, I reached out to Jason. I found myself at a loss for words, yet I knew I needed to share my thoughts with someone. "Hey, I just wanted to inform you that I visited your mom's house. The dinner was quite pleasant," I remarked. "That's wonderful," Jason responded, his tone less surprised than I anticipated. "She truly values your visit. She mentioned that it went smoothly." "She appeared joyful," I remarked, yet a lingering thought nagged at me. Was this merely a casual dinner, or was there something deeper at play? "Hello, it's Larry once more." After that dinner at Mary's place, I couldn't shake off the strange feelings lingering in the air. She wasn't a bad person or anything, quite the opposite, really. She was warm and thoughtful, likely just attempting to be amicable, yet there was an unsettling quality in her gaze, a certain depth in her eyes that made me feel uneasy. It felt as though she was exerting excessive effort to forge a connection, and it was difficult to overlook. A nagging sensation lingered, suggesting I might have misunderstood something. Perhaps I had inadvertently conveyed something that led her to misunderstand, yet I continually reassured myself that I was merely overanalyzing the situation. Ultimately, she held the role of Jason's mother. It would be absurd to believe she had any hidden agendas. A few days later, I received another text from her. Initially, it seemed quite ordinary, a straightforward inquiry about my well-being. However, the more I reflected on it, the more it unsettled me. What was the reason behind her frequent texts to me? Was I overanalyzing it? Perhaps her intentions were rooted in friendliness, or perhaps she was simply seeking companionship and conversation, yet it seemed to transcend mere small talk. Her messages carried a subtle hint that I found impossible to overlook. I chose to reach out to her to clarify the situation. I didn't intend to be impolite, but I couldn't continue to let this weigh on my thoughts. I had to uncover the truth behind the situation. "Hey Mary," I remarked as she answered the call. "Greetings, it's Larry. How are you doing?" "Larry, it's wonderful to hear from you." She spoke, her tone radiating a level of enthusiasm that took me by surprise. "You crossed my mind just now. How have you been faring?" I made an effort to maintain a cheerful tone in our discussion. "Excellent, excellent. I'm simply occupied with my tasks." "You're familiar with the experience. What about you? Is everything all right?" "Oh, she remarked with a weary breath. "It's been challenging, yet I've managed to hold my own. With Jason away for work, the solitude can be a bit overwhelming at times, yet I'm finding a way to cope." The subtle melancholy in her voice resonated with me, stirring a sense of guilt within. I found myself in a dilemma. I didn't want to contribute to her sense of isolation, yet I was uncertain about what she truly sought from me. It seemed as though she was probing, gauging whether I would take the bait. "I understand," I replied, attempting to convey encouragement while maintaining a certain distance. "I understand that it can be challenging at times, particularly when you find yourself alone, but you have your friends and family to lean on, don't you? You are not alone." "I understand," she said, her tone changing slightly. "But sometimes, it's just nice to have someone nearby, you know? I truly value your assistance with the car and your presence at dinner. It truly held great significance for me." Once more, there lingered a suggestion of something deeper. Her gratitude went beyond mere assistance. She was emphasizing how significant it had been for her, as if she were attempting to establish a more profound bond. I tried to resist the urge to dissect it, yet I found myself unable to stop. I began to sense that I was immersed in a situation that eluded my comprehension. "I'm pleased to have been of assistance," I remarked, attempting to maintain a laid-back vibe. "I'm always glad to offer my support." A lengthy silence enveloped the conversation, punctuated only by the gentle sound of Mary's breath on the other end. It seemed as though she was searching for the perfect expression. "Larry," she finally said, her voice now a mere whisper. "I was curious if you might want to visit again sometime. Perhaps we could simply engage in conversation, share a drink or something along those lines. Absolutely no pressure, naturally." I find myself at a loss. It's been some time since I've enjoyed the company of another, and it would be lovely to share moments with someone who's pleasant to converse with. A knot twisted in my stomach. This was precisely what I had dreaded, that she would push things beyond the limit. I found myself uncertain about my readiness for this, yet I also felt a strong desire to avoid being impolite. She was the mother of Jason, and I had no desire to cause her any pain. "I'm not quite sure, Mary." I spoke with caution. "I've been quite occupied with my responsibilities recently, and I wish to avoid any uncomfortable situations. I'm truly grateful for the invitation, however." "Oh, absolutely not. I didn't intend to make you feel uneasy," she said hastily. "I simply considered that it could be pleasant. However, if it becomes overwhelming, I completely get it." Her voice carried a gentle, remorseful quality, and it was clear she was attempting to withdraw, yet the harm had already been inflicted. The boundary between camaraderie and something more had been breached, leaving me uncertain about how to mend it. No need to be concerned. I suggested we work on alleviating the tension. I will certainly stay connected, however. Things are a bit chaotic for me at the moment. She appeared to come to terms with it, yet I could still detect the disappointment lingering in her voice. All right, I see what you mean. The offer remains available for you. You're always invited here, Larry. Thank you, Mary, I replied, making an effort to convey sincerity. I'll be in touch shortly. Once the call ended, I remained in quiet contemplation for a time, attempting to unravel the complexities of it all. Did I perhaps respond too strongly? Was I overanalyzing, or was she genuinely attempting to deepen our bond? The entire scenario was beginning to resemble a chaotic puzzle I couldn't figure out how to solve. The deeper I delved into my thoughts, the clearer it became that a conversation with Jason was essential. He had to understand the situation, or at the very least, I had to gain his insight on the matter. Perhaps he could assist me in unraveling the mystery of what was truly going on. With a steadying inhale, I pressed the digits on my phone. Hey, Jason, I mentioned when he answered, I need to discuss something with you. Hello, it's Larry once more. Following that conversation with Mary, it became clear that a shift was necessary. I could no longer maintain the facade that everything was okay. The entire scenario felt incredibly strange, and I had to determine precisely my position with Mary, and even more crucially, where Jason fit into all of this. It transcended mere comfort for me. I understood that I needed to confront it directly, regardless of the discomfort it might bring. I made the choice to reach out to Jason. I understood that the path ahead would be challenging, yet it was far more beneficial to engage in conversation rather than allow unresolved issues to linger. I thought we had always shared everything, so I assumed this discussion would follow the same path. Yet, I felt a flutter of anxiety. I found myself uncertain about his reaction and whether he would accept my words as truth. I wasn't aiming to stir up any trouble, but I felt compelled to express this feeling that had been weighing on me. Hey, Jason, I mentioned as soon as he picked up, we need to have a conversation. Hello there, how are you doing? Jason spoke in a relaxed manner, yet I sensed a hint of worry beneath the surface. He had an uncanny ability to perceive when something was amiss. I just finished a conversation with your mom, and there's something important I need to share with you. I spoke, making an effort to maintain a calm tone. Honestly, I realize this may come off as strange, but I have a feeling she could be overstepping some boundaries. A silence lingered on the other end. The sound of Jason's breath reached my ears, revealing his struggle to comprehend my words. Could you clarify what you mean? He inquired with care. I'm not sure, my friend. I remarked, my fingers tangling in my hair. She continues to reach out, sending texts and making calls, attempting to arrange some time together, you know. It feels as though she's making an effort to bridge the distance between us. And after that dinner, I simply found myself at a loss. It's beginning to seem unsettling. Jason fell silent for a moment, and I sensed the tension escalating. Uncertainty clouded my mind regarding his thoughts, yet I was acutely aware that articulating this would prove to be quite a challenge. Do you really think so, Larry? He inquired at last. Perhaps she's simply being cordial. She has found herself in solitude quite often these days. I don't believe she's attempting to create any awkwardness. She simply feels isolated. The hesitation in his voice was palpable, amplifying my discomfort. Jason's skepticism was palpable, yet I pressed on with determination. I understand that she's feeling isolated, but this doesn't seem like mere friendliness, you know? I spoke, making an effort to maintain a steady tone. It seems as though she's attempting to elevate our relationship to a different level. I'm uncertain whether she realizes it, but it's beginning to unsettle me. A lengthy silence enveloped the room, and I could nearly sense Jason sifting through his thoughts. At last, he uttered his words. All right, listen, he said. Thank you for sharing this with me. I genuinely feel that way, but I doubt my mom would ever consider doing something like that. She truly is a remarkable individual. She's been facing so much recently, and I doubt she's fully aware of her actions. A sense of relief washed over me as I listened to him stand up for her, yet an unsettling intuition lingered, suggesting that all was not as it seemed. Uncertainty clouded my understanding of her intentions, yet I realized that turning a blind eye was not an option. I understand your point, but I believe she should recognize how this is being perceived. I mentioned that I have no desire to stir up any trouble or exacerbate the situation, but I believe it's necessary for me to take a step back for a bit, at least until she comes to understand what's happening. Jason fell silent once more, and I sensed he was reflecting on everything I had shared. It was evident that he didn't completely grasp my situation, yet I remained hopeful that he would eventually see things from my perspective. I didn't want to create any awkwardness between us, but I couldn't simply remain silent and act as if this wasn't troubling me. "I'll speak with her," he finally declared. "I assure you I'll discuss it with her, but I don't want you to feel uncomfortable being around, my friend. You have been a steadfast companion, always by my side through the years. I really hope this doesn't jeopardize our friendship, you understand?" "I understand, my friend." I expressed my reluctance, feeling the burden of the situation pressing down on me. "I believe it's time for me to have a little distance at the moment. I will manage just fine. I simply need to determine how to maneuver through this." "Absolutely, I understand," Jason remarked. "I'll keep you updated on how things unfold with her." "I appreciate your honesty, Larry. Your kindness means a lot to me." Following the call, I lingered in my car, gazing out through the windshield. I found myself uncertain about the next step, yet I sensed that I had given my all. Engaging in conversation with Jason provided some clarity, yet I remained uncertain about Mary's thoughts. It had transcended my own experience. It was also about Jason, and if things took a turn for the worse, it could impact us both. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief knowing that Jason was going to talk to her, but I still had a nagging feeling in the back of my mind. I wasn't sure what to expect from Mary, but I knew that whatever happened next, it was going to be a conversation I couldn't avoid for much longer. The situation wasn't over, and I wasn't sure how it would end, but for now, I had done all I could to make sure I wasn't crossing any lines. I just hoped Mary would understand where I was coming from. "Hey, it's Larry again. I'm not going to lie. These last few days have been some of the most awkward and stressful of my life. I've had so many things running through my head, and I was just trying to figure out where things would go. To be truthful, I longed for a resolution, yet beneath the surface, uncertainty lingered about the outcome. The situation was chaotic. The only way to genuinely resolve the situation was to have a direct conversation with Mary. After my conversation with Jason, I felt a sense of closure in my efforts, yet I remained uncertain whether Mary truly grasped the seriousness of the situation. I had to have a conversation with her. It's time to stop hesitating and face it head-on. To regain my sense of comfort, I needed to be straightforward with her and establish clear boundaries. I had a feeling Jason might reach out to her, but deep down, I understood it was my responsibility to intervene and establish the atmosphere. The long-anticipated day had come, and I felt a heavy sense of dread wash over me. I reached out to Mary to see if she was available for a coffee meetup, simply to engage in a relaxed conversation, and she was on board with the idea. I made an effort to temper my hopes, yet deep down, I understood that this dialogue was bound to alter the course of events, regardless of the outcome. I reached the quaint little cafe where we had planned to meet. The atmosphere was serene, with only a handful of individuals dispersed throughout, leisurely enjoying their beverages and engaging in conversation. Mary occupied a cozy corner table when I entered, her inviting smile welcoming me the moment our eyes met. I approached and took a seat, a tightness gripping my chest. "Hey, Larry," she said, her tone warm and inviting as always. "How have you been faring?" "It has been some time." "Indeed, I've been well." I attempted to sound nonchalant, yet I could sense my heart racing in my chest. This was more than a mere exchange of words. I had much to express, and I aimed to convey it gently while ensuring the message was unmistakably clear. Thus, I started to focus on maintaining a calm and even tone. I've been reflecting on a lot lately, and I believe it's time for us to have a conversation. Mary arched an eyebrow, her smile wavering just a bit. It was clear to her that I meant business. Very well, she replied. What thoughts are swirling in your head? With a steadying inhale, I filled my lungs. I simply wish to express my sincerity to you, Mary. I've sensed some unusual tension between us recently, and it's important for me to express my feelings. Her expression changed, and I noticed her attempting to decipher my thoughts. I had never approached her with such candor before, but it was necessary. Let's get straight to the point. I hope this doesn't put you in an awkward position, but I feel that your attempts to connect with me have been somewhat overwhelming. It seems you might not be aware, but it's beginning to feel as though some lines are being crossed. Mary gazed into her coffee, her fingers gently outlining the rim of her cup. She remained silent for a considerable time, and I could sense the thoughts churning within her mind. Laria, she began, her voice now more gentle. I never intended to create an awkward situation. I find myself in a state of uncertainty. Lately, I've been experiencing a sense of isolation, but when I'm in your presence, everything shifts. Your kindness has always made it easy for me to open up, but I understand. I may have been a bit too direct. Her words struck me with an intensity one hadn't anticipated. Her eyes revealed a deep vulnerability, stirring a sense of regret within me for even broaching the subject, yet I knew I had to remain resolute. I comprehend that, I remarked, making an effort to maintain a soft tone. However, it's important to recognize that my perspective differs from yours. I'm only seeking a friendship, nothing beyond that. Mary nodded slowly, her cheeks warming as the gravity of the situation began to settle in. Once radiating confidence and self-assurance, she now appeared somewhat hesitant. I understand, she murmured softly. It was never my intention to place you in a situation that felt uneasy. I suppose I became a bit too enthusiastic. A wave of relief enveloped me. This was the moment when everything needed to be revealed and discussed openly. I sought to eliminate any further misunderstandings, to dissolve the awkward tension that lingered between us. Listen, I said, inclining my body just a bit. I'm truly appreciative of our conversation, but I believe it would be wise for both of us to take a moment to reflect on our desires regarding this situation. I value our friendship deeply, but it's important for me to ensure that we are aligned in our understanding. She offered a subtle smile, her eyes reflecting a hint of sorrow, yet she nodded in accord. Absolutely, I can perceive that. I also value our friendship and don't want to see it fade away. After quite some time, it seemed as though we were finally in sync. It was a comforting realization that she harbored no anger or distress. I understood that the atmosphere was somewhat tense, yet it felt preferable to address the unspoken rather than let it linger in silence. The dialogue unfolded differently than I had anticipated, yet it lifted a burden from my mind. Mary grasped my perspective, and I had ensured she was fully aware of my position. I felt no anger, nor did I wish to complicate matters unnecessarily, however, it was evident that our relationship should remain amicable. Nothing more, nothing less. As we sipped the last of our coffees, our conversation meandered through various topics, life, work, and the usual assortment of random musings that had become our tradition. The atmosphere felt familiar again, yet I sensed a change had occurred. I found it impossible to act as if nothing had changed, yet in certain respects, that was perfectly fine. At times, transformation is essential for improvement, and I wished that this dialogue would serve as the pivotal moment we both sought. As I stepped out of the cafe, my thoughts felt organized and serene. The uncomfortable atmosphere had dissipated, and I sensed a newfound lightness within me. Uncertainty loomed over the horizon, yet I found solace in the resolution of past events. The circumstances were challenging, yet I was certain I had made the correct choice. I tackled the issue head-on, and although it wasn't the simplest discussion to engage in, I felt assured it was the most effective path ahead. I was uncertain if Mary and I could ever regain the closeness we once shared, yet I understood that the lines had been drawn, and that realization was sufficient for me. The bond remained intact, and that was what truly counted.